It's very awkward. We're like,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's start, please. Take a seat. Thank you. So, welcome everyone, Berlinale Special, Infinity Pool's press conference. It's such an honor to stay being here for such a vibrant and innovative film. Let me introduce our guests. From the right at the back, the actor Jalil Lespert. The protagonist, Aexander Skarsgard. The protagonist, Mia Goth. And the director, Brandon Cronenberg. Seems that we have already questions. Yes, please. There's one here and then here. The first one is in the third row. Please, the guy with the gray.
Hello, okay, it works. Hello, I have a question for Brandon Cronenberg. In your previous movie, Possessor, and in this picture, we can see very important psychedelic shots with neon lights, blue lights, and red, and so forth. And in your first film, in Antiviral, there were some surreal scenes, but not specifically scenes like in Possessor or in this one with neon lights and admittedly openly psychedelic scenes. So how did you decide that you insert psychedelic scenes in your previous film and in this one? So how did it happen? Thank you.
Part of it was just that it was an 8-year gap. So I guess I got incredibly bored. Also, Kareem Hussein, my cinematographer, who's right there. It took a very long time to get Possessor made, and so we started experimenting with some ideas, and then the film kept not getting financed, so we kept experimenting, and then it still didn't get financed, so we kept experimenting. And by the time we made it, we had a lot of ideas that we wanted to play with aesthetically and formally, and so that's part of why it was so different. But Infinity Pool, it was made with different tricks, but it was sort of somewhat in the same spirit of the formal experiments that we were doing.
Here, please.
Hi. First of all, thank you for bringing this film here. Since when I made a film that featured sperm, the most asked question was, what did you use for the sperm? So I would like to pass the baton and ask what you used, which kind of substance.
Sorry?
What kind of substance you used for the semen scene?
The semen. I actually don't know. It was Dan Martin designed the semen, and actually the first time we did it, it kind of got gummed up in the cock, so it didn't really work, and we had to reshoot the cock with different semen.
I got to sample it, and it was kind of salty and a bit sweet.
Yeah, he never got the flavor quite right. Texture eventually got there. Flavor.
Texture was great. Flavor it leaned a bit too heavily on the salty side.
Completely.
I wish it would have been a bit sweeter.
There, yeah. Yeah, there, yes.
Still delicious, though.
Oh, yeah. Better as a sauce for it, actually.
Yeah.
It had that umami.
A good base.
There was an umami-ness to it, the kind of mushrooms and, yeah.
I think that was the last question. Thank you so much for coming out, guys.
Please,
okay.
Please.
Oh, hi, this is Rodrigo Fonseca from Brazil, from the Estado de São Paulo. I have two questions. Mia, Pearl has just been released in Brazil. It's an enormous success there. You seem to have a very personal approach to genre cinema, to fantasy, to horror. I would like to understand how conscious is your process of creation. How do you prepare to a film yourself to a film like this one? And Brandon, I think since your first short, Broken Tulips, that, by the way, is amazing. You have a unique way to work the sound engineering of your films. I would like to hear a few words about the sound in Infinite Pool.
Okay.
Well, I would say that it's not something that it's not really been a very conscious decision in pursuing this particular genre. It's something that's just really been more coincidental than anything. First and foremost, I'm incredibly director-driven, and I've had the opportunity to work with some really incredible directors like Brandon Cronenberg, and it's not necessarily that, I don't shy away from this kind of material. I find within these sorts of stories, within these sorts of scripts, characters that are really challenging, characters that allow me to explore facets of myself that I don't really feel very comfortable to reveal outside of a set, and I enjoy that process. I enjoy being pushed, I enjoy provocative material, I enjoy stories that divide audiences, and hopefully, people watch these kind of movies and they take something from it. When Brandon reached out to me, if he was making a romantic comedy, it's something I would have signed up for, because I've been a fan of his work for a while, and it just so happened that it exists within this realm, but it could have been anything, really.
Sound-wise, I don't really have one particular way of working. I mean, I've worked with different sound designers on, I think, almost all of my films. My favorite sound design experience, in a way, was on Possessor, because I was working with a sound designer in his attic in Plumstead, and he was a pretty crazy guy, Martin, who would put a conducer, he put a contact microphone and a transducer, I think, on my skull, and like ran Jennifer Jason Leigh's voice through my head, because you can vibrate the skull, and that creates sound, and so we were playing with that kind of stuff. But yeah, so it's I guess the films tend to be subjective. They tend to all be from the experience of the protagonist, and so the sound design is not really objective sound design. It's sort of internal sound design, as with the hallucination scenes. It's kind of finding the impressionistic sound rather than the straight sound.
There's a question there, yeah. and here. I will try to make you all happy.
Thank you. So, first of all, very interesting film. A matter for me has to do with tourism. There is a certain aspect that you push the limits somehow, using both fiction and horror and everything. I mean, and the thriller, you push the limits of what is the real core of tourism at the moment, in the way that expropriates everything all over the world. Would you have something in mind to make a comment on that, about your work, your film, and the connection with the deeper essence of what the commercialization of tourism have become? And also, Mr. Skarsgard and the other two, what is the interaction between you and that couple of Ebert and Roth? I mean, what is the interaction between your role and the other two persons' role in this strange, hedonistic, underground atmosphere that's being created in this resort? Would you like, all if you like, to make a comment about your roles and your interaction?
Do you guys want to start?
Sure. James is, I kind of see him in the beginning of the movie as a puppet, and these are the puppeteers. When we meet James, he's clearly quite broken. He lost his self-confidence, if he ever had one. That book he wrote 6 years ago, The Variable Sheath, was quite pretentious, maybe not a fantastic novel. It definitely didn't do well. And he's been struggling ever since. So, and he's also struggling in his life and his relationship. So it feels, in that first meeting with this couple, it doesn't take much for him to follow them like a hungry dog. All it takes is they just need to stroke his ego a little bit. It's just one little comment that Gabby says, when she's like, "You're James Foster." Just that recognition. I love your book. Oh my God, he's just melting. And that was really fascinating to me, how that's all it takes. And then after that, he will do anything to follow them, because he finally found someone who appreciates him. And it's a way for him to start rebuilding his confidence and his belief in his quality as an author. So that was quite fun to play with, how gullible in a way he was, and how easy it was for them to manipulate him.
Thank you. You want to add something, Brandon, or?
Do you want to add anything?
Or Maya? No.
Well, I was just going to say that I think Gabby is able to identify a lot of herself within James, and that's one of the reasons that it's so easy, and she's so capable of wrapping him around her little finger as easy as it is, really. And they both marry into wealthy families. They both have failed careers, and the way they navigate that is rather different, but they're really quite similar from an internal point of view. And so, she's a failed actress living in Los Angeles, and here at this resort, she's found the ultimate stage, and she's finally able to portray all of these roles that she's longed to be a part of. And, and because of that, you get this really varied, dynamic character that starts off as one thing, this rather sweet, unassuming woman, and by the end of the movie, she's just completely wild and unhinged and just primal, and everything in between.
I will speak in French, it's more easier for me. But pour moi, le Alban est un personnage qui s'amuse de tout ça, qui a pas vraiment j'ai pas en tout cas cherché à trouver de double sens, mais j'ai l'impression que ça l'amuse. Il est vraiment le personnage très direct qui s'amuse de cette situation, qui est complètement qui vit pleinement ses vacances et qui rentre à Los Angeles à la fin très heureux de tout ça, et qui est presque normal dans ce monde complètement fou. Et c'est ce qui me plaisait d'accompagner évidemment ma femme là-dedans, dans ce jeu-là de rôle un peu presque sadique avec le personnage de James.
Thank you. There's a question? No, before there's the lady there.
Hi, it's Ana from La Cartelera Turia, Valencia, Spain. This is a question for Alexander and Mia. As an actress, we can see, like in the movie, there's a lot of challenging scenes, very physical and also mentally. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit how was preparing for that kind of acting, and Alexander, especially when you become a dog, how was preparing like for those scenes between two and then individually. Thank you very much.
I didn't really. To me, the bulk of the work was in pre-production, working on figuring out James's journey, these pivotal moments in the screenplay. It was kind of a cerebral approach to it, I think, and then conversations with Brandon. We had about, I guess, almost a year before we started shooting the movie of just discussing the character and the story. the goal with that was I wanted to get to a place where once we jumped in and started shooting, I wanted to get out of my head and I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to kind of throw myself in there and see what happened, kind of. Because it's so visceral and there's so much happening, and I felt if I've done the homework and it's back there hopefully somewhere, then I can just be open to whatever happens on the day. And I wanted to be that vulnerable and fragile and open to see, because again, it's quite a reactive character for most of the movie. So I wanted to kind of leave everything open to just see what happened on the day. And we often didn't over-rehearse. Sometimes I like rehearsing scenes, especially if they're very technical, and sometimes if they're super dialogue heavy, I find it helpful. But this was very emotional and an emotional reaction to something. And it was quite nice to, often we didn't even block the scene. We just like, all right, this is it, and then let's just start shooting. And we did, and it gives you an opportunity to really explore something for the very first time. And for Brandon and to hopefully capture that, and for everyone to be a bit surprised, and I found that quite interesting. So, in scenes like with the first execution, the first time he witnesses the clone get murdered, we talked quite a bit about what would that experience be like, but we also didn't. Again, I try to get to a place where we talk about it and then leave that behind. So once we start shooting it, we'll just discover something. And Kareem has this, it's kind of a long shot of, we didn't really know what was going to happen, what James's reaction to that would be like. And those are also the most exciting moments on set, I find, when you're surprised by what happens in front of you. And we had quite a few of those moments. The dog stuff was different. I was a dog for 3 months, naked in Stockholm, leading up to that sequence. Just to get to know just the mannerism and the movement of dogs. So I would go to dog parks every day. I would hump old ladies in the streets, just take a shit on the sidewalk, just kind of stuff to embody a dog. I don't mean to brag, but I think it paid off in the movie. I'm a devoted actor, what can I say?
It's amazing that the shitting scene got cut from the US version, but you'll all see the graphic shitting scene in the German version.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you want to say something?
The work is the work, regardless of the kind of movie that you're in. The preparation that goes into building a character follows a similar blueprint from project to project. And like Alex is saying, you do the homework so that by the time you get to set, you can hope that everything that you've been working on for the last few months will just serve you as you're navigating what that scene is eventually going to look like. So these bigger moments that you reference, you can talk about it a little bit, you can touch it, you can discuss it and walk around the subject a little bit, but I'm very mindful of over-intellectualizing certain scenes that really just require like a level of immediacy and newness and freshness, and if you start dissecting it and bringing in technique and you can kill it before you ever get to set. So I'm very aware of that, and just hope that the work that you do in preparation and the lead up to that scene will serve you.
There's a question there, please. Yeah.
Hi, Ariane Kwaja from the University College London Film Society. I had a question for Mr. Cronenberg. So, throughout your work, there's a consistent thematic element of the rich and powerful using technology and conduits of tourism and commerce as a way to exert control or to purge themselves of certain fantasies, and that's also a common element reflected throughout J.G. Ballard's work. So I was wondering if you could talk about, assuming it influenced you, the work of J.G. Ballard and how it influenced Infinity Pool, and in particular I was wondering whether you could talk about Supercan and Cocaine Nights, both of which take place in resorts that are similar to the one depicted in the film.
Sure. Yeah, they're definitely... I do like J.G. Ballard quite a bit. Actually, I wanted to adapt Supercan before we made this, and I was sort of reading it at the time that I was writing. It's not really the same thing, but it's definitely related to that series of books that he wrote. And now we're trying to... a producer I know has the rights to Supercan, and we're actually trying to adapt it as a series. So yeah, there is that connection for sure, and hopefully we'll be able to do a Supercan series.
Hello.
No, there's a before him. Please. Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. Lazar Hismo from Derek Radio Bulgaria. I have two questions. First, for Mr. Skarsgard and Mia Goth. Were there any particular moments in the movie that were improvised? Alexander, do you have an animal in your household? And the last question is because I think the world premiere was at Sundance, and then New York City, and then here Berlinale. And in these three film festivals around the world, I'm interested in the audience reactions, because I immediately thought of the movie Irreversible by Noé for the brutalistic scenes, and I'm interested in your perception of the audience. Were there cases of masses of people leaving the cinema? In my experience, in our cinema, it wasn't like that. Everybody, I was shocked that everybody stayed, but yeah. Thank you.
What was the question again?
The first one was, were there improvised?
Oh, improvised, sorry.
Yeah. And the reaction from the audiences.
Oh, yeah. And something about my household?
Do you have a dog or cat?
Oh, if I have a pet? Oh, okay. Sorry. Improvised?
No.
No, not really. Like, not entire scenes, right? Reactions, again, to the point I was making earlier, there was definitely a lot of space to play around with reactions to what was happening around us, but it's a really fucking good script, so you don't really have to improvise the dialogue much. It's right there. So we didn't improvise much, did we?
No, there wasn't much dialogue. There wasn't really dialogue improvisation, but you guys really ran on the action front with different things. So there was a sort of, we were feeling our way through certain scenes, and I feel like you guys found a bunch of interesting stuff from an action perspective, but not, it wasn't very dialogue improvised.
Right. Pets in my household, dogs, lots of dogs. That's also why I'm such a phenomenal dog in the movie. And the third part of that question was brilliant. And I'm still thinking about it. What was it?
I don't remember. What was it again?
What was the third part of the question?
It had to do with Sundance, New York. And
Oh, yeah.
The audience.
I was a bit disappointed. No one really walked out at Sundance, did they?
Surprisingly few walkouts.
Yeah.
We didn't do very well that way.
Yeah.
We could have had more walkouts, probably.
I mean, yeah.
people really picked up on the humor of the movie, which was a pleasant surprise because you never quite know how that's going to work out. You know, there were scenes where it was pretty funny when we were there, having inside jokes. But you don't know if the audience are going to connect with that, but they did. So that was rather nice.
Yeah, when we showed the film, we showed the film to friends and colleagues just as we were editing it to kind of get reactions. Zero laughter, pretty much. And so I thought, we're fucked. Like, if we can't get these people to laugh, we're totally fucked. But then Sundance, it was a pretty laughter-filled.
Was that because that was the first time me and I saw the movie with an audience? Had you seen it other than friends and family? Had you seen it with strangers, a room full of strangers?
No, not like a strangers test screening or anything. It was all, which made it worse because it was our friends, our friends. Really,
yeah.
You guys are really insulting us right now. It's
yeah.
like a very, very harsh room. But yeah, no, there was a good reaction. It was very, very laughter.
It was thrilling. It was quite because again, I'd only watched an early cut on my computer at home, and to Mia's point, like you don't, it comes alive when you're watching with an audience and you feel the energy in the room, and when people get involved and they get disgusted or they get excited or they laugh or they cry, it's just it was an extraordinary experience to watch with an audience.
Actually, sorry.
Oh, please.
I don't know if you know this, but when we were in New York and I was coming out of the theatre, I was talking to someone who had just watched the movie, and she was so shaken by it that she actually ended up tripping over a plant pot and falling on the ground. She was so rattled by the movie. She was okay, but she fell to the ground.
Why was there a plant there? Was it on the right? New York is pretty weird. Also, this is not to put a lot of pressure on the Berlin crowd, just because the Sundance crowd was fantastic and got all the jokes. That it's fine if it doesn't go over here.
Yeah, we'll see tonight. Please.
Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming in the UK. Thanks so much for being here. My question was going to be more specifically around the use of intimacy coordinators, because I think they've sort of sparked debate and have been a bit divisive. So I wondered, from a filmmaker's perspective, Brandon, if you use intimacy coordinators or if you have other techniques to kind of create a safe space, particularly when you're pushing to perhaps more bizarre and perverse places. And from the actor's point of view, whether that you find them helpful. And an add-on question would be, Alexander, you didn't bring your leash today, and I wonder why.
We did have an intimacy coordinator on this one. It was my first time using one, just because it's sort of a new role, or it's becoming more common. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was helpful on this one. I mean, I'll defer to the actors here in terms of whether it felt safer or better. But on the previous film, there were nude scenes and sex scenes, but it was not involving a huge number of people, so it was sort of easy to have those conversations about where everyone's boundaries are and making sure that everyone was comfortable with how those scenes were designed. And but in this case, it was a lot of people, and it was not just a group of actors, but there were also body doubles for certain shots. And so just having someone tracking all of those people and having those conversations with that many people, and then being able to say, okay, here's where everybody's comfortable, here's how we can kind of design those scenes within the boundaries that everyone has, was, from my perspective, actually useful on this one.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, Mia. I didn't know. No, please.
I was just going to say that I actually don't find intimacy coordinators very helpful. I do think that I've been incredibly fortunate with the types of filmmakers that I've worked with, and so you see Brandon, he's just the sweetest, most gentle spirit, really, and that has a trickle-down effect in everyone that he casts and the crew that come together. It was a really familial group of people, a bond that we created. So, sometimes it's better to just do the work rather than talking and going around the work. And I've been in instances where I have to ask my co-star if I can, touch his shoulder and then give him a hug, and that's actually far more uncomfortable than just like doing the scene and then being able to, if something feels off or something's not clicking in the way that it should, then it's incredibly valuable to have someone there as a point person. But sometimes it's just better to just get into the work and then take it from there.
Moi, j'ai trouvé que sur ce projet, C'était intéressant d'en avoir et c'était très nouveau pour moi qui vient en plus du cinéma français où on est très ouvert, beaucoup plus que dans le monde anglo-saxon où c'est plus formel. Et c'était très étrange que ça politisait un peu tout. On était, en effet, comme dit Mia, c'est d'un seul coup, tu es là, on te dit, si tu mets la main sur l'épaule, est-ce que ça va? Et si on formalise des choses qui sont de l'ordre de l'instinct et du jeu. Mais en même temps, c'est vrai que ce film, on allait tous très loin et en même temps dans un univers très particulier, très excessif pour certains. Donc c'était intéressant de pouvoir formaliser en effet les choses, de pouvoir dire en effet là, il y a des barrières, des choses où je me sens pas à l'aise. C'était la première fois que j'entendais les acteurs s'exprimer là-dessus et je trouvais ça plutôt bien. Mais c'est vrai que ça coupe un peu l'instinct. On est d'un seul coup dans quelque chose de très formel et c'est un peu nouveau. Et tant mieux si ça permet de clarifier les choses. Après, à partir du moment où on est sur le plateau, comme disaient Mia et Alex, on joue, on est là pour jouer. Donc on part non pas en improvisation, mais en tout cas, il faut aller chercher les scènes et on retrouve notre instinct d'acteur et de metteur en scène. Mais c'était un peu nouveau, en effet, de devoir formaliser tout à ce point.
Oh yeah, and the leather collar and leash. I'm sorry I couldn't bring it, but I had to get it lubed up for the Kit Kat Club tonight. So,
Please.
Well, thank you everyone for the film. Since acting, this is a question for the actors mainly. Acting as a concept involves transgression, right? And I was wondering if transgression and excess played a role in your preparation, in your work for this film, because it is a very transgressive film anyway. So was it a thing or completely the opposite? It was not a thing. Transgression in performance, excess in all your performances.
in preparation for the role,
Or during the shooting, just because acting itself is already being out of yourself and being someone else.
yeah.
In a transgressive film, does transgression play a role at all for you?
I find it quite cathartic to do it in front of camera, to get it out, to do all that kind of transgressive stuff in front of the camera, because I'm quite mellow and boring in real life. So I'm very Swedish in that regard. So it's a good way for me to connect with my inner beast, turn more primal, more atavistic, and howl and crawl around on all fours. So it's kind of my therapy, I think.
I think that's a question. Please. Yes.
I have two questions to Brandon. One is, what inspired you to adapt this story? I mean, like a narrative, from a novel or a book. And the other question to you is it harder for you as a director whose father is also a famous director to prove your own style in making movies? And one question to Aexander Skarsgard, what attracted you to this role? And how you accept your roles? I mean, what you have to how you are attracted to this role, in this character?
In terms of inspiration, I don't know. There's like an idea that will get stuck in my head, and I just have to sort of pick at it for a while, and then it starts to pull out a story and then a character. In this case, there was a short story I was writing that I never finished because I can't actually write a short story. It was just the first execution scene, and that was that, and then it started to turn into something slightly bigger. It was a comic and a comic anthology comic at one point, and then gradually became a film. I don't know. I'll leave it to other people to decide whether it's harder for me to prove myself. I think when you're making movies, you're just trying to make the movie, and that's not something that you really have control over or can care about. And Alex?
Well, in terms of what attracted me to the role, it's a really good role. It's a really good role. And often the character journey is from here to here, but for James it's from here to here, and then there, and it's just such a fascinating ride. And it was a script that I loved, and it really stuck with me. I couldn't stop thinking about it after reading it, and that was really refreshing. I feel that a lot of scripts I read are quite derivative, and it's a very safe version of a movie I'd already seen 40 times. And even if they rarely stay with me, and I rarely think about them. I feel like, well, this is competent, but to have something that's so out there and so almost anarchistic was really refreshing to me. So I think the combination of it being a phenomenal script and a character where you get to play so many different facets of the same character was really, really exciting to me.
No, there's a question there, and then there.
Hello again. If it is possible, I repose my question about the culture of tourism. How much you all believe, and especially you, Mr. Cronenberg, that your whole film somehow is a sarcastic attack against what the culture of off-limits tourism is these days, and the way that expropriates whole other cultures all over the world, people and attitudes. And if anybody else wants to make a remark about that, would be very well accepted. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. I got caught up and didn't answer that question before. I don't know if the culture of tourism. I think it's changed in one way specifically right now, and so the film does attack tourism, which is I find to be very boring and weird, and there is that sort of processing of the world. It's almost like tourism exists as a kind of alternate dimension or a parallel dimension where there's no culture and there's no history, and I find that to be extremely sinister. I don't think that's changed recently. The only thing that I've noticed that's changed, and maybe since I wrote the film actually, is that there are trends in tourism now. I feel like maybe because of Instagram, everybody starts taking pictures of Porto, and then you have to go to Porto, or there's one city, and you suddenly realize everybody's just been there last year, and everybody's talking about it, and so rather than tourism everywhere, people are moving in clumps and sort of attacking a particular area, and because that becomes a trend. I feel like that's probably different, but otherwise it's been the same for quite some time.
Please, there. Sorry, there. Yes.
Okay, it's Andrzej from Time of Culture Polish magazine. I have two already questions. The first is really important. Are you original self, or you are just like the doubles of yourself? So, are you true Brandon Cronenberg and true actors? Because this is also the play with your father, like you're a double of him or something, like the next identity of him, or you have to just discuss with him in your movies, I guess. So this is the first question. Are you doubles or original self? And the second question is based on the really original idea. This is really tempting to have this opportunity to kill myself without the consequence, to outlive my original death. So this is also the question for Brandon. I would like to ask you, after The Possessor, you are really interested in hacking the self, hacking the original identity. So this is the second chapter or the second movie about that. So I would like to ask you about this idea of faking, or the fake and original in this movie, because there are a lot of fakes, like fake culture, fake identities, and so on and so on. So what is interesting in the hacking the self, or the making the fake from ourselves or from our identity? Thanks.
In answer to your first question, I'm incredibly bad at doing press, and every time I do press, I get deeply depressed and I kill myself. So I make it double to go and do the press for me, and that I feel incredibly insecure because I'm a hermit, and so being in public and talking to people just disturbs me on a core level. I go hang myself in the back, but there's another guy who goes and makes a double of himself. So there's a cycle. I can keep doing this for indefinitely. In terms of the hacking question, to me, I don't think there is an original self. I guess that's the thing, and maybe that's the idea. I don't know if it's one specific idea that I'm stuck on, but I think a lot of the times you make a movie about what you are, or about what people are. You know, even if it's a drama, even if it's not a science fiction film, to some degree, we are often exploring what we are. And I kind of don't think we're anything. You know, I kind of think that we construct a character that's a fiction, and we perform that fiction for ourselves. And at the same time, we're performing for other people, and at the same time, they're kind of taking pieces of us and building a version of us when they see themselves. You know, we all have seen people who are completely not self-aware. It's just so clear to everybody around them that they don't know who they are in the world, and that they're lying to themselves about who they are. At the same time, nobody has any sense of the interiority of another person, so you're also not getting the reality. And so I think, you know, a person is a collaborative fiction, basically. There isn't a kind of real or a fake self.
Okay, now the situation is they have to go. So I have to decide who's gonna kill me, if some of you or some of them. So I have two people with the mic, and then I have to close. I'm sorry for the others. Please, one is here and one is there.
Right. Oras Kiribaev, Esquire, Kazakhstan. I have a question to Brandon Cronenberg. So in your movie, you criticize the rich, you know, who can easily get away with like murder as long as they have money. And during the span of the last year, we've seen many movies on that topic. My question is, don't you think that making such movies is just a sort of a comforting pill rather than a sort of a solution, since the rich can laugh at themselves and the poor can see that the problem is being discussed? And so don't you think that in such movies there should be some sort of solution, what we should do with the rich being rich? Thank you.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, though, and I feel like to a certain extent, when you make art, you're reflecting the world and exploring what you're seeing in the world, and you're exploring these ideas. I don't know that there's a simple solution for wealth divide. I don't, you know. To your point, yes, just, you know, making a satire doesn't solve anything, but it's not. I hope I'm not presenting it as a solution. It's just you see the world and you explore what you see in the world, and that's as far as I can go. But I'm not very talented, so I don't know. I'm not smart enough to solve that problem.
So the last quick, please, because really they have to go.
This question is to Alexander and his business with dogs. As it happens, I run and created the Palm Dog Award in Cannes, and you mentioned just then that you didn't have a collar with you. Luckily, I do have one. And my question is, which was the part of being a dog that you found the most enjoyable, exciting, and memorable? And because you mentioned that you didn't have a collar with you or a lead, whether you would consider, as did Helen Mirren a couple of years ago, to be photographed with the Palm Dog collar just shortly after this press conference.
Clothing optional?
Well, I would like to leave that open to you.
You have a date, my friend.
There is the only bit of clothing that isn't optional is the Palm Dog collar.
All right, it's on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Favorite part of that, I mean, humping myself naked was arousing on so many levels. Because I got to hump my favorite person in the world. Yes, I guess we have to leave. Our clones are waiting outside. They're going to do another 45 minutes of fantastic Q&A. So stick around, guys.
Thank you. You are amazing, guys.
Thank you. you guys. Thank you. Tom dog. I think my neck.